to the For All the Saints podcast, and I am absolutely delighted to have with me here today in person, John Bytheway. John, thank you for coming on the show.
It's great to be with you again.
I know. We met on a tour bus in Lancashire, where I'm from. We were taking some people around, and that was a wonderful day.
Oh, so fun.
And you have some connections to England. Your family, the Bytheway family,
Yes,
is from England. Is that correct?
Yes. In fact, I have a cousin, probably a second cousin or something, whose name is Brian Q. Bytheway, who wrote this nice little essay and put it on Family Search. And there's a way to upload memories on there that is so wonderful. Photographs, documents. I don't think they'll take movies yet. I don't even know if they have a limit on how much you can put on there, but this was there. I printed it out this morning. I knew he had written it about the Bytheway and the Kendrick families in England, and it sounds like they both came over in about 1882, although they were baptized in 1847 and, 1862, I think. So my great-grandfather was Benjamin Bytheway, and he married Sarah Elizabeth Kendrick. And he speaks of where they were from. The Bytheways, when I look at my own name, John Bytheway, I find some Bytheways in Shropshire.
Oh, okay.
Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly where it is, but I think, did we get near there on our tour? We were in
Shropshire's further south.
Further south.
We were in the north, but you did say some of them are from West Bromwich near Birmingham. Is that correct?
Yeah. In fact, when I read about one of the baptisms, it said, let's see.
That was it. You said
Thomas
18...
and Sarah. Yeah. Let's see. Thomas and Sarah were baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on August 27th, 1862, and attended the West Bromwich branch of the Birmingham Conference. Thomas was ordained to the office of a deacon by Elder John Egbert Taylor on November 27th, 1862. So it was fun to be there and to feel like this is my home, you know.
It's a good thing that they didn't carry across the Birmingham accent over here, because that is notorious.
Is it different?
Birmingham, how do they say it? They speak like this. You're right. How are you? I'm going to be offending everyone there. All the Birmingham listeners, I apologize. But that's fascinating. It's interesting when you do those tours, just how, I love doing them because you get to see the spiritual home of so many Latter-day Saints. I mean, I'm pretty sure by 1860, 50% of the Utah population was from England.
Amazing. And somebody referenced that in General Conference. I remember. I think that Elder Heber C. Kimball is an ancestor of Elder Quentin L. Cook.
Right.
And maybe it was him that mentioned it, because I've heard him talk about it before. The British mission in the early days of the church was such an important event that the more I've studied, the more I thought, at a time when Joseph Smith really could have used friends and loyal friends around him, he sent them all, to the British Isles to say, go gather Israel over there, and it changed the church and strengthened the church and everything. And I guess my ancestors were part of that.
You shared on the bus when we were there about Charles Dickens, his encounter with the Latter-day Saints is one of my favorite stories as well. It's
the pick and flower of England.
The pick and flower of England, yeah. And there's another great quote that I'll have to put on text. It's a later part of that is just wonderful.
I love A Christmas Carol, the Charles Dickens book, and I bought myself a, what do they call it? Like heirloom edition that looks exactly like the first edition.
Right.
A kind of a replica edition of that. And it's fun to read it. However, somebody needs to write a commentary because, languages and phrases and things change. And some of those in there, I don't know what they mean. I see things like "Bob's your uncle," and I think, okay, that must mean you're wonderful or something. But I've always had a theory about that. I wonder what you think. I wonder if Charles Dickens, I'm sure he was acquainted with the parable of Lazarus and the rich man that Jesus taught, and how the rich man finds himself, in the spirit world and says, "Go and tell my brothers about this place. Warn them about this place." And I think that's Jacob Marley. He's coming back to tell Ebenezer you got to repent. You don't want to be in this place, and we were wrong about our priorities and everything. I've always wondered that about Charles Dickens, but always felt like that was such an inspired and delightful work, A Christmas Carol.
I certainly think it's inspired. When you consider how almost destitute Charles Dickens was before that, he was really struggling financially. Mm-hmm. None of his ideas were working. And then he has this, dare we say it, revelation, where he writes a story. And it's obviously so impactful today. I definitely think that. I've got this quote, which is when Charles Dickens went on the boat that the Latter-day Saints were emigrating from. So he said his Pick and Flower of England quote. Uh-huh. This is slightly later in the book. I afterwards learned that a dispatch was sent home by the captain before he struck out into the wide Atlantic, highly extolling the behavior of these emigrants and the perfect order and propriety of all their social arrangements. What is in store for the poor people on the shores of the Great Salt Lake? What happy delusions they are labouring under now, on what miserable blindness their eyes may be opened then, I do not pretend to say. But I went on board their ship to bear testimony against them, if they deserved it, as I fully believed they would. To my great astonishment, they did not deserve it, and my predispositions and tendencies must not affect me as an honest witness. I went over the Amazon's side, Amazon was the boat, feeling it impossible to deny that, so far, some remarkable influence had produced a remarkable result, which better-known influences have often missed.
A remarkable influence, yeah.
And it just shows, when you have someone who's genuine, and I think that's happened a lot recently in the church, is we're in the news a lot, and people are seeing our actions instead of what they're hearing and saying, those don't align what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing. Which is obviously great for us.
You'll know them by their fruits, right? What are the fruits of this? And I'll have to read more of that. That's beautiful.
It is. Now, speaking of Elder Cook and conference, we've just had it yesterday. It finished at the time of recording. What are your immediate kind of takeaways, reflections on it as a kind of wider view?
Well, it just made me happy. So many wonderful talks. I loved seeing the multicultural choir on the Saturday evening session and the energy that they had, and seeing the worldwide nature of the church being talked about more and more. Our brothers and sisters all over the place. Don't you just feel like you love these people, want to meet them and shake their hands and everything when you see and you hear those saints in Africa that had the horrible accident, the young women leaders and the young women, and hear their faith to persevere. Amazing and inspiring. So it's kind of humbling and inspiring, all of it. But my wife and I were talking afterwards. Was there a theme? And it was kind of lots of different things. I thought, what about you? What did you think?
I think the same. I think it was wonderful for me with all of the events of the last weeks and what happened in Africa, and to think, at a time where we might have been like, we need to corral together and we need to challenge these things. What was it instead? It was be a peacemaker, increase in personal holiness. I just felt a real call to be closer to Jesus Christ more than anything, which, is good. It's a good thing that is what's felt after a conference. But I just, in a time where you really didn't know what the response would be, I guess we did know it was just to be more like Jesus Christ and to turn outward in our kind of communities, concerns, and
nothing too surprising, but inspiring.
Inspiring is the right word.
And the peacemakers, that was one of President Nelson's masterpieces, was that Peacemakers Needed talk. Our bishop in our ward asked everyone in the ward to read it slowly twice. He wanted everyone to feel that message. And to go back to the Beatitudes, and blessed are the peacemakers. And the original teachings of Jesus on that was really, really powerful.
Elder Stevenson's talk was just such a powerful way to open that conference. It was exactly what was needed, I felt. Now, you are we're known today in the church for having lots of ambassadors on social media, influencers, you might call some. I feel like you are the original ambassador.
Really?
Yeah, you know, all of us growing up, we all had DVDs of your firesides, and in a way where we didn't have that from anyone else really. It was John Bytheway. You were watching John Bytheway on a Sunday evening. And I wonder what was your actual journey into doing that, into speaking and writing?
Wow, how interesting, because I never would have imagined that someone across the Atlantic Ocean would be listening to me.
We all listened, John. We all listened.
Well, it was, it all started, I think, with going on a mission. My brother, Kendrick, his first name, and I just mentioned my great-grandfather last name of Kendrick. My brother Kendrick served his mission in Sapporo, Japan. And I was looking at the timing of his return and decided I'll wait a couple of months after Kendrick comes home before I leave. And that timing turned out to be very interesting. Kendrick came home, wonderful mission in Japan, which is such a beautiful, there's so many things I could tell you, Ben, because my father served on an aircraft carrier in World War II,
Right.
and survived a kamikaze attack off of Iwo Jima. I mean, he was right there in the thick of it.
Gosh.
And was not a member of the church at the time. My grandfather had become kind of less active and married someone who was not a member of the church. So my dad wasn't raised in the church at all. But on the aircraft carrier, his buddies dragged him to church. Because he was from Salt Lake City, so he knew about the church and things. But they dragged him to church, and he thought, I should look into this. I should date some LDS girls. And he met my mom that way. And after my dad was baptized, he proposed to my mother, married her, and then was called on a mission. Which is a strange order. Baptized and then married and then called on a mission to New England.
Wow.
And came home from that mission. And now I can't remember why I'm telling you that, except that the timing for Kendrick coming home from his mission affected me. So I submitted my papers after a couple of months and served in the Philippines. And wonderful place. So when I was there was one temple under construction and 4 missions. I think now there's 22 missions, something like 11 temples announced or under construction. Just wonderful, beautiful people. And but anyway, when I got my first companion there was Elder Charles Edgar Buchanan III from Phoenix, Arizona. And we had a wonderful time together, but he called me when I returned home and said, hey, come down to BYU and do EFY. And I said, what's EFY? Or what's FYI, I think is what I said. FY, what? And I had such a good time there that I moved down to Provo, Utah from Salt Lake City and started working as an especially for youth counselor. And as you know, that idea, that format eventually became like FSY.
Yes.
And this idea of having young adult counselors for the youth, which was brilliant.
Genius.
Because those young adults are so fun and so full of life, and they can go out and dance and be fun and bear their testimony at the end of it. And the youth are, is this possible to have this much fun and be this outgoing and have a testimony at the same time? So anyway, I came down there and I did that and just loved it. And a couple of opportunities came up to give a talk. And we had a speaker cancel, I believe, and I had a chance to give a talk, and it was terrible, as I recall. But I don't know. I just kind of got in there, started being involved as an especially for youth counselor, and then a couple of chances came along to speak. And when I was in high school, my family moved, and I remember just going through a period of time where it was a hard transition to go to a new school. And I literally went to the Highland High School library looking for a book about how to make it through high school, and there wasn't one. There were plenty about, other things, but not, I was getting okay grades. It wasn't that. It was emotionally and dealing with friends and popularity and so forth. And I thought one day I'm going to write that book. And when I got home from my mission and was working at Especially for Youth, I finally thought, I should write that book. I always thought about doing. And so that's been out of print forever. So that was in the 20th century, if any of your listeners remember the 20th century. But I think I published What I Wish I'd Known in High School. I sent it to Deseret Book and was, as the scriptures might say, shocked and amazed that they were interested. At that time, Sister Sherry Dew was the director of publishing there. Okay. He later became the CEO and now is in Deseret Management or something. But they published that, and I thought, well, that was my one thing I wanted to say to young people, And Sister Dew was back on the phone. What else have you got? Well, I don't know. And so I thought I'll write another one. And I just kind of started that idea. And I had worked with BYU continuing education, doing seminars and things. So somebody said, let's record that. And that's where those came from. And
amazing.
Just kind of was not my plan, was not what I intended. I never would have dreamed people across the Atlantic would be listening to this. But I hope it helped,
Oh, it did. It massively did. Especially, even at the Atlantic, I can't speak, even over the Atlantic.
Yeah.
You realize many of us were the only Latter-day Saints in our school.
In your whole school.
I was the only Latter-day Saint in my whole university.
Oh, my goodness.
So growing up, having those videos that you were doing, it was wonderful, And, of course, we all, like, my mother was my seminary teacher. And, your ward is like a family unit because you do so much during the week. And so... And they're quite tight-knit wards. They're smaller wards than I anticipate that you would get here. So everyone kind of cycles through the callings. Mm-hmm. And so to have those resources coming over, teaching the gospel in such a light, kind of relatable way, it was so valuable. So I thank you for that. We'll get back to the episode in just 1 second, but I just wanted to make sure that you've double-checked that you are subscribed to the show so that we can keep growing it and that you don't miss any of our exciting episodes. Thank you.
Wow.
But yeah, we surely did listen.
So were those cassette tapes or compact discs?
We had discs.
You had discs?
The ones we had.
We started with cassettes. Those are ancient. But
sure, at one point we would have had a VHS.
Yeah. One of the, when I was new at Especially for Youth, I think it was 1986, there was this teacher that came, and I just went, wow, look at him. He's engaging, he's funny, he's outgoing, and that was Brad Wilcox, who was just recently released as the Young Men's General Presidency. And I remember watching Brad and just, I didn't know that was possible, to have that much fun while teaching. And I didn't try to be Brad. In fact, I specifically remember being in a business class that I had at BYU where, oh my goodness, business policy was the name of the class, and it was hard. But this professor, his first question every week was, what is this business's distinctive competence? We would read 20 or 30 pages about this business and what they were doing, and then we had to recommend what they should do. It was hard, because no matter what you said, he was going to, challenge you. But I remember thinking one day, when I had a chance to speak, what's my distinctive competence? What can I do? Well, I can't try to be somebody else. That wouldn't be right. And one of the things I loved to do was impersonations. I don't know if you heard any of those.
I don't think I've heard your impersonation.
Yeah, but I did some of those. And across the Atlantic, they might not make any sense for television shows here. But they're just my own quirky sense of humor. I just tried to do that. And then I had a wonderful mentor. Her name was, I had so many. Kathy Schlendorf now, who told me, do you see what Brad is doing? She called it hook, teach, apply. There's a learning hook. Here's a story or a poem. and tell that story, because that's engaging, that's the learning hook, and then teach the principle from that, and then how do you apply that to your life, and then go back to another hook. Hook, teach, apply, hook, teach, apply. I had never heard anything like this.
No.
But it helped me to arrange a presentation. And then every year, as you know, the church has a new theme for the youth, a scriptural theme. This year it's look unto Christ, look unto me in every thought, doubt not, fear not, from section 6 of the Doctrine and Covenants. And so come up with some hooks, some teaching, and how do I do that? Hook, teach, apply. Another thing she said was, Brad does heavy light. There's a moment when you can teach and bear testimony, and then there's a moment when you can smile a little bit. And the challenge has always been, I don't want to be irreverent. And I think that Brother Truman Madsen said once, there's a difference between being light-minded and light-hearted. Light-minded would be making fun or joking about sacred things, but being light-hearted is different, and that's appropriate. So trying to find that balance was helpful. But I've always loved teaching young people, because my own experience was not easy, and seeing them get some strength, or seeing them learn something and make a face like, I've never heard that. Oh, I love that.
I think you get that balance in the lightness, like we saw that in conference a lot.
Sure.
Where there's kind of a roar of laughter, but it's something that relaxes you and opens you to the gospel message that's about to be given. You see so many talks now start with kind of a funny story.
Yeah.
And then they go, but it relates to this.
Elder Matt Holland's story.
Elder
Elder Patrick Kieran. Boy, do we love him. He came to our stake here in Salt Lake City to reorganize our stake, and he was so wonderful. He called one of my dear friends to be the stake president. I was glad he called him, but the Lord called him, of course. But Elder Kieran said, now don't put him under a microscope, or his family. He said, he can't take it, neither can you. He said, if his kids do anything that makes you raise your eyebrows, he said, put them back down. And he endeared himself to our stake. We love Elder Kieran. That was really fun.
Yeah, that would be fun. Now, I mentioned you in this ambassadorial role. I didn't know what else to call it, but over the year, how many books have you written now?
I'm not really sure how to count, because some of the books were, for example, the one I mentioned, What I Wish I'd Known in High School, was revised later on. It was full of President Ezra Taft Benson quotes, because that's who the president of the church was when I wrote it, right? Yeah. And so it was revised and then combined into, I think they called it a crash course in teenage survival. Desert Book's always doing stuff like that. And so I'm not sure to count that. Is that one book or is that 3 books? But it's somewhere between 35 and 40, something like that.
Amazing.
So
I was joking with my mother before. I was saying, how on earth do I prepare to interview John? Because there's so much material to kind of consume and condense to discuss. But here we are, though. Over the years that you've been doing this, and you're still front and center in that with the Follow Him podcast, you're still really active in sharing gospel truths online. What have you observed about the changing landscape as you've been doing that? Because I imagine it has changed so much from when you started, again, on cassettes and whatnot, to where it is now. Do you have any observations?
Maybe just access for the saints has been wonderful. Like if you have Wi-Fi or cellular service, you have access to churchofjesuschrist.org. I mean, there was a time when churchofjesuschrist.org was, it was what, LDS.org at first? Fairly small. There are millions of pages of content there now. And you don't have to go to Desert Book if you don't want to, And I think that's been an amazing part, is that anybody can go and find these talks. People are already listening to General Conference talks over again. So I would say access is one thing, which is great. I hope that in developing areas of the church, which we've talked about, like, was it Elder Jeffrey R. Holland that said it's always 1830 somewhere?
Oh, that's a great quote.
Yeah. somewhere the church is new and struggling, and people are struggling, and hopefully they have access where so many resources and materials are available for everybody. I think that's a big change, which is great. You don't have to rely on a publisher that might not have a retail store where you are. If you have Wi-Fi and if you have cellular service, you can have access to stuff. So maybe that's a good word to use.
Yeah, definitely. And with your focus on young people specifically, and for a while you've been serving on the Young Men's General Advisory Board. Are you still serving on that now with the new presidency?
Yeah, no, we were released on August 1st. So
you were with President Lund's kind of board?
Stephen Lund and Brother Brad Wilcox and Brother Mike Nelson. We all served together for 5 years, and it was just amazing, wonderful experience. I was the weak link with that group, let me tell you.
Sure not.
Oh, they were all returned mission leaders and just brilliant men, and I just got to watch. It was so fun.
When you are creating talks, thinking about what to address in books and what you're sharing online as well, have you seen any trends evolve in terms of the issues that you feel young people are facing at the time, like as you've gone through that period, and especially as you served in that advisory board as well?
I think it might be a yes and no type of a thing. That some things will always be important, friendships and associations, and then being influenced by those friendships and associations. I mean, I think it's fascinating that we speak of the influence of the Holy Ghost and how critical that is, and that the nickname we have for people who are on social media is influencers. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And also the fact that catching the flu, a sickness, comes from influenza. That's the same word. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
But so I think, are you influenced or do you influence? A good question for young people. And I've discovered, as I have, 6 children now and 3 grandchildren, that some of your children, you think they will be influencers more than they will be influenced, by friends. I don't mean social media influencers, and others you think, this one could be influenced by the opinions of others, and it really makes you think we need to equip them to be around influences, but to have their own direction, their own convictions about what's good and right and true and where they're going. And that will always be the same. So that's kind of the yes and no thing, is that there'll always be that. But there are more influences now. I remember hearing someone recently say that for maybe my generation, I was born in 1962, so I'm 63 years old this week. As a matter of fact, my birthday's coming up.
Congratulations.
Thank you. That most of what I learned as a youth came from parents, leaders, teachers. Most of what I learned, vast majority, parents, teachers, leaders. Today, add social media to that. And most of what young people are hearing, maybe a bigger part of the piece of the pie chart is coming from social media than from parents, leaders, and teachers. And I feel like one of the things that we must teach is how to discern between truth and error, don't you think? And I think one of my favorite stories in the Book of Mormon is being able to discern who's a friend, who's an enemy, like Lahantai, Amalickiah. That whole story in Alma 46, 47 about Lahantai. Hey, Amalickiah, let me be your second in command. Oh, and we're reading it going, don't do it, Lahantai, and being able to discern truth and error. That's huge, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's almost overwhelming
Yeah.
today. And it's interesting that you brought that point up, because that's what really stood out to me from President Oakes' talk about how actually the influence of parents and teachers
what's happening
was massively diminished,
that's really
because
true.
You've got no opportunity. Your home is, what did he say? Your home is more like a boarding
school,
house.
He
boarding
said.
house.
Yeah.
And that really struck me as a new parent to think, gosh, I really need to take that seriously and think about that and proactively equip, observe and equip. That talk. Brilliant talk, but
not just the importance of families, but the dialogue that happens in families, the influence that happens in families. Yeah, exactly. See, I go back to my dad going on a mission after he was married and the impact that had on all of us that of course I'm going to go. My dad went, he was married, and family influence and extended family. Somebody put in my hands an article that was in The Atlantic, a magazine in the United States here, about the influence of cousins. And I had never thought about this. But there's something different about cousins than friends. They're family. And when family size is dwindling, so is the influence of cousins.
Interesting.
Yeah, I'd never thought about it before.
Yeah.
But when I thought back, I thought, yeah, our cousins lived up the street, and we did all sorts of family activities together. And go see them, sometimes we'd have a Sunday dinner with the cousins, and they were our friends, and there was no, because they were cousins, maybe as teenagers, there was no romantic expectation or anything like that. It was just our cousins, and we loved hanging out with our cousins. I thought, what an interesting thought that when family size diminish, our availability of cousins diminishes too.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Gosh. I'm trying to convince my siblings to provide my daughter with some
need more cousins.
Yeah, we need more cousins. This ties actually nicely into something you mentioned earlier that I wanted to bring up again, which was mentors and the importance of mentors. You've discussed how they were important to you. I found some stats that were really interesting. 75% of Americans, this was a huge study, a big sample size, 75% of Americans who had a mentor growing up said that relationship was a major contributor to their success in life. And 67% of all young people can remember a time growing up when they needed a mentor but didn't have one. And with this rise of social media, mentors are thrust upon us, and actually we find quite quickly that they can be disappointing because they're held up in such a way that is unhealthy, or they're not very great mentors to have. What advice would you give to young people in how to find mentors who are worth following in such a congested social media environment?
Yeah, great question. It's kind of just what we've been talking about before, being able to discern truth and error is who might be a good mentor. If you can find those in your family, in your ward, a seminary teacher, boy, that would be great if you can find them there. And that's how it was for me. Think of a metaphor. Elder Glenn Pace compared the church to a train, a locomotive years ago. And that some run ahead of the train, too often take a wrong turn, he said. Some throw logs and rocks on the tracks to try to derail it. This is in 1992, I think, October General Conference. He said, some run alongside the train, and while they may never go play in the woods, they just can't seem to get on the train, right? And I would want to say, find mentors who are on the train. This train is going to reach its destination. I mean, I felt that a lot more at General Conference, right? This train's going to make it to the station if you can find people on that train. And I hope that adults who are in the position where they could be a mentor will take that seriously. I think a beautiful example, in fact, I was talking with Brother Brad Wilcox about this once, and I mentioned Amaron and Moroni, or Amaron and Mormon, I'm sorry. And Brad, if I recall right, said, I want to see that. I want to see an article on that next week, Yes, sir. So it was published in the Church News. Go to, churchnews.com. And there's some really interesting things because Mormon was 10 years old when Amaron approached him. And if you just start reading in Mormon chapter 1, this is the person Mormon. This is the book Mormon within the Book of Mormon. But it says, I being 10 years of age, a Mormon came unto me. Now notice who came to who. He didn't say, hey, I need a mentor. Mormon came to me and said, I perceive that thou art a sober child and art quick to observe. Imagine someone who comes to you and says, I see gifts and talents in you that you may not even see in yourself. And what that would do to you as a young person. You know, I'm excited to watch your future unfold because I see some gifts and talents in you. And I maybe that is what happened when Amaron came to Mormon and said, thou art a sober child and art quick to observe. So observe this people, and when you're 20 and 4 years old, go to the Hill Shim and get the records. And he gave him a mission, talked to him about his talents and his gifts, and he came to him. Amaron came to Mormon. And there's just little mention of Amaron. That's about it in that chapter. But that's a mentor right there. At 10 years old, do you even know what's going on?
No.
I think he saw things in 10-year-old Mormon that he may not have seen in himself. And because he mentioned it and encouraged him in that area, I think it developed within him. And maybe Mormon personally wanted to develop that, hey, my mentor Amaron told me that I was observant, that I was quick to observe. I think I'll try to do that, which is kind of a good trait for a historian, to be quick to observe, to see choices and consequences and how they relate, you know. So I hope that people who are listening, who are in the position of a mentor, will be intentional and proactive with that, and go find a kid and say, you know, you gave that talk and I saw you did something that I was really, you know, help them see what their gifts and talents are. And that may have a huge influence for good.
That's such a great answer. There's so much in there that's just like, yeah, because like I said, it is overwhelming for young people. Even now, I'm 27, and it's still, you have to really be conscious not to kind of take the things that the world gives you in terms of people to look up to, that come and go, and say, oh, no, and do focus locally. And I think when they changed the role of a bishop to focus much more on the youth, that's just so, I just think that's so inspired, because it came perfectly with that time where it was becoming very, very congested. And as a youth, I looked to my bishop as one of those key mentors, and
absolutely,
the calling enabled him to have more confidence in coming to us, you know?
Yeah, and to have access to you and to be with you.
Yeah.
Now, I heard these stats, and there's a lot of chatter in the church all the time, but I heard that before that change, the average young men's president was serving for about 9 months is all.
Wow.
While the average bishop is of course, about 5 years. And my understanding is that, I don't want to say this is the reason, because I wasn't there for the inspiration, but I think this had something to do with it. Move the youth closer to the keys and the relationships of a bishop. And the adults give more to the Relief Society presidency and the Elders Quorum presidency. For the adults, move the bishop closer to the youth. And I think that was the idea. And, you know, there's growing pains, there's challenges with that. But my understanding is, I'll be careful how I say that, is that young men's presidents were originally called to run the scouting program.
Yes, which we never had.
Right.
Outside of America.
So I wondered about that. So Boy Scouts of America is what they called it here. And that they needed them to run that. And let me quote Brother Brad Wilcox again. He said that 10 years ago, is it 10 now? If you ask someone, what is the program for the young men of the church, they would say Boy Scouts. If you asked, what is the program for the young women of the church, they would say personal progress. And Brad insightfully said, no one would say Jesus. What is the program for the youth? It is becoming lifelong disciples of Jesus Christ. That is the outcome we're after. And you can unpack that, becoming. Oh, did Elder Oaks bless the church in 2000 when he gave the talk called The Challenge to Become? Because I feel like we all have a little law of Moses in our spiritual DNA left over, where's the checklist? Show me what I need to do, and I'll do it. When Elder Oaks, it's actually not about what we know. It's not even about what we do. It's about what we are becoming. That makes so much sense. That just rang true. In fact, I hope they changed the song, I am a child of God, to teach me all that I must be, based on now President Oakes's talk, because it's what are we becoming? And then the parable of the wise and foolish virgins makes more sense. Why couldn't they share their oil? Why were they so selfish? Well, they weren't. It's just that some things aren't shareable. I can't go to the judgment and say, hey, listen, can I borrow some of your honesty? Can I borrow some of your charity? I just wasn't very charitable in my life. You can't pull that out and share it. And President Oakes, I thought, oh, that is so good. What are we becoming by what we're knowing and doing? And so where did that come from? The youth program. Yes. Becoming lifelong disciples, not part-time disciples, not one-time disciples, becoming lifelong disciples of Jesus Christ. That's the young men's, the young women's program. That's the outcome we're after. You know.
And I saw, this is purely anecdotal, maybe you've seen the same though, is that the first youth cohort in the wards where I was serving, under that change, and I was serving close to the bishop at the time, so I saw it very closely. Those youth were so much more prepared to go on their missions than I was. and I had great young men's presidents, that's not it, but just there's something about that relationship. They were very close to their bishop, and it did impact them, and that cohort was just, they're different, and they are different moving forward, not just that one, but going forward, it amazes me.
It's so exciting. I feel like, was it under President Thomas S. Monson, the age change has been huge for missionary work.
Yeah.
The emphasis of gathering Israel from President Nelson. So my oldest daughter, Ashley, who, I don't know, I might go, inspired by that, goes to Lyon, France on her mission. She meets a handsome young man in the MTC who's on his way to Paris, France. Different mission. But they write their whole missions, and now they're married, and I have 2 grandchildren.
Amazing.
My next son goes to Iceland.
Wow.
His mission. It's actually under the Copenhagen, Denmark mission.
Right.
And serves in Iceland, speaks Icelandic. It's amazing language. Taught at the MTC for a while after I got home. My next daughter goes to Tahiti.
My brother went there.
Really?
Yeah. During COVID.
Oh, yeah. Well, and she spent her first 9 months in Tucson because of COVID.
Right.
Made it to Tahiti, and she has a picture of her by the ocean at Bora Bora, teasing Andrew, is this like Iceland, And then she met a young man on her way home. They were sitting next to each other.
No way.
Who was in Tahiti. They're married now. Have a granddaughter. Then my son, Matthew, went to West Virginia. You can see I'm throwing their names out here because I want him to hear this. Served in West Virginia. He's engaged to be married to a sister he met there. Lizzie, who served in also the West Virginia mission. I have a son in Montevideo, West Uruguay right now.
Wow.
I don't know who he's going to meet there. Guess we'll find out. So, and it's Monday. He could call at any time. So, I'm so grateful for President Nelson emphasizing that gathering of Israel, and that age change has made. I teach at the BYU Salt Lake Center, and I teach young adults, and it's amazing to who experienced this on their missions. All these hands go up, and you're like, and some of the sisters, because I'm getting old, I can't estimate age anymore, I guess. They look like they're, 14 years old. Yeah, when I was on my mission, I'm like, whoa, look at this. Isn't this wonderful? And they've had that experience, and so grateful for that emphasis. And as you said, mentorship in their own wards. What a blessing.
Especially when I found this other, I like stats and studies, and I found this really interesting new study that was quite groundbreaking, that found that there's no such thing anymore as the midlife crisis, because the peak of ill-being, as they call it, the opposite to well-being, the peak of ill-being now happens in that youth period, that decade.
Whoa.
And it's significantly different. And what they found is that the slope of well-being just gradually increases as you age now, after you get over that period. So, when we talk about young people struggling, quantitatively, yes, and qualitatively, every way you look at it, they really are genuinely struggling according to these studies. So, when I look at that and think, yeah, that's everything that the church puts in place, the wonderful purpose that you find on your mission, and the experiences that you have, the opportunities to continue meaningful education, gospel-wise and otherwise, the ward communities that you have, everything just kind of assuages that, and it's still difficult, but you have so many. I just feel very grateful to be in a faith community and in the church that has all of those things. That so many gifts from God,
such purpose and direction. And my son Matthew, that just right after he got home, called him to work in the temple, and he gets to be one night a week gets to be in the temple and feeling that influence. And we heard that emphasized in this last conference, didn't we?
Yes.
And I was thinking a conference or two before really emphasized, but it's been amazing. When I was on my mission, go way back now, before you were born, I had an ancient teaching device called a flip chart. We open it up.
I've heard about these.
Have you? Yeah. And I had a photograph there of all, count them, 16 temples. All 16. Wow. 16. Imagine that. I'm sure Preston was one of those. No. Yeah.
Probably London. Well,
probably London.
1998.
It was London. Yeah. I knew there was one in England. It was London, Swiss temple probably.
Yes.
And then the rest, there were 16, and I could name them by sight. And that was in the 80s when I was in the Philippines. And now I couldn't possibly, with 300, I think the number I heard was 382 operating, announced, or under construction.
I mean, President Nelson announced 200 as we
just learned. And I remember one conference where I just remember announcing 17 in one conference when there were 16 on my flip chart. So the idea of hastening the work is really happening. And I remember hearing my co-host Hank Smith on Follow Him when his son is in the Washington, D.C. I better not get this wrong. Might be Washington, D.C. East Mission or something like that. I'm sorry. But I think the month he entered the MTC, they broke a record of having 1,000 missionaries in one day entering the Provo Missionary Training Center. One day, 1,000. So the hastening of the work is happening, and there's narratives out there that the churches are losing members like crazy, and it's like, it's not what we're seeing.
Well, we discussed that in England, didn't we?
Yeah.
There's so many narratives about Europe and England.
It's not what they're
leaving
saying.
In their droves. It's like, are you joking?
No, they just post about it now. There have always been people leaving, and you look at early church history, and people were leaving and coming back, and sometimes in the same day, and and those were, it's 1830 somewhere. They're tough times, but overall, there's growth. Who used the number 900,000? Was
Elder Cook?
Elder Cook in 3 years or something like that. 900,000. Imagine that. And what was his statistic when they were first at that number? Was 1940? Is that what he said?
Yes,
something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
So that curve is going up, and I need to do a better job, and we all do it. Just inviting people to. Come make some new friends.
And it's the best time to do it, really, when people are, as we mentioned before, when people are seeing our actions and saying, oh, yeah. Because we're seeing people walking off the street, women, like 20, the last one was like in her 20s. She just said, oh, my grandma spoke about the church when I was younger. And
wow.
I wanted to, of her own accord, no invitation.
Yeah, wonderful.
So imagine if we are actively inviting people. It's just more receptive now. Now, it's amazing to me how you have been doing this for a while, the sharing online and doing your talks, and as you said, the books and the podcasts, and yet you seem to still see the scriptures with such freshness, if that's a good word. I want to. I've written here on my notes, putting John Bytheway spectacles on. I suppose what I mean by that is, are there any things you can share with us in order to help us kind of view the scriptures with that same kind of freshness, where we can pull stuff off? If we were to put John Bytheway spectacles on when we study our scriptures, what would that look like?
Yeah, I am so humbled, and when our guests come on to follow him, that's our secret sauce. My job is to nod thoughtfully and pretend that I know it. Oh yeah, I was just going to bring that up myself. Oh goodness, there's so many wonderful, faithful, brilliant scholars in the church. I'm not one of them. I just sit and listen to them, and to hear them talk about it. But I don't know. It is a delight to look and to slow down. I had a professor. You're going to laugh. I loved his name, because you hear it and you go, I bet he's a member of the church. His name was Joseph Fielding McConkie. And Joseph Fielding McConkie was a son of Elder Bruce R. McConkie.
He was my father-in-law's mission president.
Really?
Yep.
Elder Bruce R. McConkie was?
Joseph
Fielding was.
Yeah,
because he was in
I remember now, Scotland.
Yeah. Oh, I loved him as a professor. And he changed my life in 5 words. Ooh, I hope it's 5. Did I count? We read scriptures too fast. And he sounded just like his father. That's how Bruce R. McConkie sounded. We read scriptures too fast, and sometimes when you slow down, it's amazing what you'll see. And if we're in kind of an idea of I need to read a chapter a night, then kind of speed is part of efficiency. But if we slow down, we start to see things. Just this last week with my class, we were talking about 2 Nephi chapter 2. That chapter alone is amazing.
Oh, yeah.
A few things that Lehi says to Jacob. Elder Bednar mentioned it. God created things that act and things that are acted upon. That dichotomy, right? There must needs be an opposition in all things. We have to be, you can't choose the right unless the wrong is also an option. There has to be opposition in all things. And in 2 Nephi 2, Adam fell that men might be. There's a line in there that Lehi says to Jacob, Adam and Eve had not transgressed, they would remain in the garden. All things would have remained in the same state in which they were created. They would have had no children. Whoa, slow down. What? They would have had no children. No, there was no procreation before the fall. I can't tell you why, but that idea alone changes our perception of Adam and Eve. Some in mainstream Christianity believe that if Adam and Eve hadn't done that, we would all be in paradise today. But slow down. The scriptures says, the Book of Mormon says they would have had no children. And the Pearl of Great Price says the same thing in Moses 5. And therefore, Adam fell that men might be. Oh, okay. And men are that they might have joy. I mean, slow down and look what is being taught there. And look what, Eve has kind of been, to use a phrase, thrown under the bus. And as Adam and Eve just really messed up everything. But our theology is totally different. We call it a fortunate fall. Was it a fall downward? Yeah. Brought sickness and death and sin and opposition and all sorts of things. But it moved us also forward. So we call it a fortunate fall. That's just one example from your question. If to slow down, and I just think, don't get me started on the topic of Book of Mormon scholarship, because it's mind-boggling. Mm-hmm. You, I'm sure, have talked about chiasmus before with people, and that was, John Welch on his mission in Germany in the 1960s. He, on preparation day, on P-Day, went to a church to learn about chiasmus in the book of Matthew. That's what we did on P-Day, right? No, we went to play basketball. But
yeah, we got food.
Yeah, you went to hear a lecture on that and thought, interesting. There's Hebrew poetic forms in the book of Matthew, this chiasmus. And he says, I woke up in the middle of the night, and boy, go watch the video. Go watch the video called The Discovery of Chiasmus. And wakes up in the middle of the night and thinks if there's a Hebrew influence in the New Testament, maybe there's a Hebrew influence in the Book of Mormon. Got out of bed, got on his knees and said, Heavenly Father, where do I look? And he said the answer that he got was just keep reading where you are. And he was in Mosiah. He was in King Benjamin's speech in Mosiah 5 and found the word, I don't know how to say it in German, it's transgression. The way he says it, he did his mouth like German speakers can do, übertreten, something like that. And he saw the word right on top of itself twice. And that was the key. Beware that you do not transgress. And the center of a chiasmus is the most important part, and that was the center of it. And he found it in Mosiah 5, like verses 10 through 12. And there's another in Mosiah 3. But then Alma 36, we all know, is this massive masterpiece of chiasmus, where Alma's teaching Helaman about his own repentance. And the center of it is, I remembered my father to have taught the people concerning Jesus Christ, the Son of God, who could forgive sins. And as my mind caught hold upon this thought, I cried within my soul, O Jesus, thou Son of God, have mercy on me. And so there's the repetition of Jesus, where everything changes. And the chiasmus reverses, and everything's repeated in reverse order. Things like that Joseph Smith never mentioned, that the jury's still out, but they don't know if there was even a book in existence in the United States about the Hebraic form. It's kind of as close as a proof that the Book of Mormon is ancient. Because it has this artifact left behind in there that was never even mentioned or noticed until, I think he wrote an article when he got home from his mission in 1969 in the New Era about this poetic form. Anyway, don't get me started, but there are things like that are artifacts that are left behind. Sister Marilyn Todd Linford was the curator at the Church History Museum downtown Salt Lake City, and had a prompting to type the Book of Mormon, to type it out.
Strange.
I have to teach teenagers what a typewriter is, but to type it out, to do it word for word. Now, I guess you could do that on any keyboard, same thing perhaps, but she started noticing when she was typing, hey, I have never typed that word before. And she started noticing that different authors used unique words that nobody else used, which kind of argues that the Book of Mormon was a very tight translation. Mm-hmm. She found out that, I can't remember, was it Nephi used 70? One of them I remember for sure. Alma the Younger used 271 words that nobody else used.
How interesting.
And she has a list of these authors and how unique their vocabularies were and how they used words that nobody else used. If you were making the Book of Mormon up out of your head, how in the world would you do that? And I made a PowerPoint of this because it boggles my mind that, this was a good translation, and there are certain words that these people use that nobody else used. Now, it's a translation in English, but they're English that nobody else ever used. A fun example is Gedona. He appears in only one verse in the whole book, and it just so happens he uses a word that nobody else uses in the entire 531-page book. And it's in Alma 30, where Korihor is brought before Gedona, and he says, why do you teach this people that there shall be no Christ to interrupt their rejoicings? And the word is interrupt. He's the only one who uses it in the whole book, and it's Gedona. Right?
How interesting.
Yeah, so it was really fun to look at this and to see. I kind of like to channel my inner Elder Uchtdorf and say, I'm looking at it from 30,000 feet, right? I'm an airline pilot, and I'm backing off going, hey, wait a minute. I've never seen that before. But from a distance, I can see an evidence. There's so many. Hugh Nibley mentioned once, he said, if one were in a speculative mood, and he worked very hard on etymologies, word origins, and he said, look at the names of Lehi's children. And I wouldn't have known this, but apparently the name of Laman and Lemuel are Arab names.
Right.
And he felt that his time, as most scholars believe, Lehi was a merchant of some sort. He already had tents, he already had camels. And then as he moved into other parts of his trade, his next two boys had Egyptian names, Sam and Nephi. Not Samuel, that would be Hebrew. Sam and Nephi, those are Egyptian names. And then Lehi went into his time as a prophet. And who are his sons born in the wilderness? Jacob and Joseph. I never noticed that before.
Yeah.
But Hugh Nibley says, look at these names. So I'm not very smart, but I know how to read things other people that are smart, right? And that helps me look at the scriptures and see things I'd never seen before and marvel at what else we might discover.
I think that's great. I think one of the greatest blessings of doing this podcast as well. We're so lucky to have all of these amazing scholars, and I guess it's great that we can provide a space for them to come and share it in a way where we can really condense it for. But it is just about 5 times over I've just had my mind completely blown about the Book of Mormon, and it's like, I'm going to look at this in a completely different way.
Never seen that before. Yeah. And one of the things that I really love, speaking of access, is if somebody has a very specialized niche or niche, or however you want to pronounce it. Back in the 80s or 90s, a publisher might have said, we can't sell a book on such a specialized topic enough to even break even. But today, with podcasts, with things like this, somebody can have a very specialized niche or niche and get that word out. And that's, I think, what we're experiencing, which is so great.
It's another cycle back to what we were saying earlier about access. Mm-hmm. It's brilliant. It's completely changed the landscape for the better. So we can see it as a good thing, as well as the challenges involved that we mentioned earlier too. But John, this has been such an honor to interview you. The time's flown so fast. I can't believe that.
I haven't even looked at a watch. I love talking about stuff like this, and
we'll get back to the episode in just 1 second, but I'm sure that you've thought of at least one person that would enjoy this episode as much as you have. So why don't you press share and send it to just one person, and it'll help us to grow the show. Thank you.
I think I don't have to manufacture any enthusiasm for it. It's just real. And I want to thank Benjamin Bytheway and Sarah Elizabeth Kendrick for, and there's all the other on my mother's side and father's side too, but these are my paternal line, for seeing that in England and bringing us here,
Yeah, when we look at the population of the world, I just feel so lucky, privileged to be.
Yeah, why do we get to know this? It's humbling, isn't it? Why do I know this now? And it's humbling and motivating. Like, I guess I have an obligation to share, don't I?
Absolutely. Well, thank you again, John. And of course, I'm sure everyone listening will already be watching Follow Him, but if they're not, then watch and listen to the Follow Him podcast.
Watch me nod thoughtfully during the entire podcast. I try to make comments. But
thank you so much, John, for
Thank
coming
you.
on the show.
Great to be with you.
Thank you for watching For All the Saints. If you enjoyed that episode, then you'll love this one.